So, Michael, thank you so much for joining us at the Show Up and Lead series. And today we're so grateful to learn about you and your leadership experience and certainly the various roles that you've had. So I'm going to invite you to introduce yourself and your journey to our audience.
Wow. And thank you for having me along, Nancy. It has been a long journey and in many, many things. So banking to start off with, and then, of course, ended up in the training centre of the Commonwealth Bank and then moved into schools, Guildford Grammar to start off with, then Wesley, then Trinity College. And then back in 2022, I moved permanently into the digital world of things, platform designs and also into the virtual reality collaboration spaces and now a bit of AI, which everyone's getting into AI, of course. So, yes. So
quite the journey.
A bit of a journey, yes.
So tell me, what have you learnt about leadership throughout all of those different experiences?
Yes. Everyone is different and everyone handles it differently. And I've been able to experience a wide range of leadership, from those that allow you to grow to those that are so insecure that they're actually a micromanagement, which is really a hard place to work in. So, lots of different ones. Probably three important ones that I count as being my teachers in life. You can do school, but these are teachers in life. Yeah.
Can you tell us more about those?
Yes, I can. The first one was a fellow who was the principal of the training centre of the Commonwealth Bank. Mm-hmm. And here I was as a quiet, shy 20-odd-year-old, and he actually recruited me in to be a tutor of all things. And the first thing he said to me was that he was going to help me with my verbal and written communications. And he gave me a A4 list of books who he said the authors were descriptive writers, so the Alistair MacLeans, yes, the Montserrats, those sorts of people. And he said, you're on public transport, so start reading. And reading I did. And then every time I spoke with him, he reminded me that the words of R and were just noises filling a space because I didn't know what to say. And he would be correcting my grammar in verbal and written form. So I remember the red ink disappearing slowly but surely over a 3-year period. And I thank him very much for that. So that was a good place to be. Joining Guildford Grammar School, I had the bursar of the day, Roy Schuler, who invited me to come out of banking and to come into the education world, which I ended up spending 32 years in that. And I remember him taking me to my brand new office, and on the wall were sketches of buildings that were actually opposite where I had worked at the Commonwealth Bank in Guildford. So the town hall, the post office was there and all that. And he had brought these sketches from someone that sold those sorts of things in Guildford to make sure that I sort of had a memory of where I had been working. So very good. And then a fellow by the name of Tony Curtis at Trinity College who we used to go walking, and he would say to me, let's go and sow some seeds, Michael. And he worked on the basis that he would sell ideas and sow ideas to people who would listen to him, and then they either took the idea and made it grow or it just died a natural death. And so those three people gave me insights into how to behave in a fashion.
Okay, so let's explore that a little bit further because, you know, this series is about showing up and leading.
Yeah.
And you've talked about three people who are really significant to you. So what are some of the things that you've learnt combining the wisdom of those three people that you've mentioned that really helped you to show up and lead in your respective roles?
Communication was the most crucial. All those three people, we had communication lines opened, but I knew why they were doing things and I knew what we were going to be able to achieve. And so that was a good thing to have. So communication was there. But also more about not cooperation but collaboration around ideas, Tony Curtis and I used to go off and play golf every now and again, but it was more about finding an isolated space and talking through the problems that we were experiencing at the time, and how to solve those issues. So that, what a way to be able to work in an office, and but still solve the things that needed to be solved. So.
Okay. Can you tell me more about your values and how you use them to, or have used them, to guide the decisions that you've made during your various leadership roles?
Yeah. It's interesting. The theory would say that I'm a servant leader. I'd like being with people. I'm empathetic. I consider what they're going through. I think I can stand pretty tall and say that everyone would say, yes, he knows my story. So, I would talk to them about their family, about what was going on in their life. Mm-hmm. So that allowed me to understand why they were now saying to me, Michael, I need holidays or I need a pay rise or things like that, So servant leadership helps you to be empathetic to that sort of thing, Values, I think people have to trust you, So my knowing the story, my compassion, my collaboration and my consistency allows them to trust the fact that if I say that something's going to happen, then it's going to happen. So I think they're the things that were crucial in making sure that I stay as a leader of people, and I definitely don't micromanage. I think empowerment is very, very crucial there, and so I would, a lot of times when I wanted things done, I would actually say, I need your help. Can we do this? How would we do this? I don't know. I'm not going to be working with it. So we actually always operated as a team. So,
Fantastic. Yeah. So can you tell me how those values then have guided you through some pretty difficult decisions?
Difficult decisions.
Or a difficult circumstance?
Look, yes, I suppose I can, because I've been in the workforce 50 years before I retired, and 22 of which were the last place at Trinity College. And I often thought that I was doing my leadership well. And yes, we would often have conversations with different people about these new generations of people. And you'd be knocking your head, saying, oh, how are we going to deal with this, But I thought I was handling it quite well. And then every now and again, yes, you do have a performance review, and I had this review and it basically was saying that I wasn't handling the people well. And you look at that and think, well, is that right or wrong, And my manner was always the same. Cooperation, collaboration, all of these things was the same. So my values were there and I knew that they were there. So you really had to say what's changed. And what had changed was people had changed because they were now younger than me, definitely. But they were different, and I hadn't taken the time to listen and I hadn't taken the time to learn. So I actually went to an AIM course about the effective management of people, because what I needed to do was relearn what I needed to be paying attention to. But the interesting part about that was the fact that the lecturer, after asking all of us why we were there, and I'd said, well, because generational changes, she actually said there's actually only 2 words that you need to worry about, and that is will and skill. Yeah. If you want to get someone to do a job, have they got the skill to do it? But before you go out and start training them to do the job, you actually have to find out if they got the will to do it. And so the learning for me in my later part of leadership roles was 2 words, will and skill. But my values stayed true to and I didn't mistrust my values. It was because I hadn't listened and I hadn't learned.
Fantastic. They're really good, listening and learning. And what that does is it showcases that leaders do need to engage in that reflective practice. And often when I'm working with leaders, the comment is, I'm so busy, I don't have time. Yeah. But this notion of reflective feedback and this cycle of improvement is absolutely critical. Can you tell me more about how you fostered leadership development in the people that you led?
You have to be able to identify if they actually want to grow. And I mean that because in some roles, people are comfortable, and that comfort allows them to just keep on doing the job that they're doing. It's like I asked my 22-year-old grandson yesterday, how did his job go? How was his day? And he said, well, I turned up to work, I did my job, and I didn't get sacked. so
okay,
so it's a win-win, and there are some people like that. So what you have to do is you have to encourage them and you have to communicate. And I have one person that I'm fairly proud of. We won't name him, but the property manager came to me and said, we've got to employ this guy because I think he's got potential to be in a succession plan.
Yeah.
So we worked together on that and we employed him. And he did quite well. And so I started to have a chat with him, understand the story about what he was doing, learn about what he was after, and he was just starting to look at family situations and all that. And then I asked him, do you want to improve on where you're going? Do you want to get to the next level? And so we then started to work out what skill sets he needed to get to those jobs. So it was about identifying skill set weaknesses and then helping him take on board those courses to improve his skills.
Yeah.
So it's about identifying and then enabling and then encouragement. And he's left the employ of the place, but he's now in a project management role at a place that he likes and enjoys, and that was nice to see that progression over about 7 years altogether. So
it's fantastic, Michael, and I really appreciate you sharing that. Can I ask then, not everyone wants to be a leader.
No.
So how do we grow the leadership capacity of people who don't want to be leaders in the workplace? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? The places that I've worked in are varied. The bank was an encouraging one that allowed you to move through the roles. In fact, if you were in a position for any longer than 5 years, you were the problem, you know. And so the bank encourages you and moves you up to those. That's in my days. I don't know what it's like nowadays. But in schools, it's very hard because there are so many different roles in there. And so if you look at the academic roles, some people just want to be teachers and that's all they want to be. So to move up to the next level is up to them. It's very hard. Within an administrative role, yes, you can identify leaders, but they're not necessarily going to be leaders in your employ. They're going to be leaders in someone else's employ. So the old thing like, I think it's Google, isn't it? They encourage you to develop leaders, and the more leaders you get, the better qualified you are, and off they go. And so I remember one of the principals coming out and saying, I've had 5 staff who have been moved to the next level, and that's what he was really, really happy about. So I think if we get down to the nuts and bolts of it then, it's just being able to identify those people and then to offer them opportunities of professional development, either internally or externally, and then to encourage them to keep motivated, to keep learning. Similar to the fellow that I mentioned, he was keen to develop. So you have to identify and talk and then encourage, and that's the only way in my roles that I was able to do that.
Can you tell me now, because you're in the technical space, so we're talking about VR and platforms, and so has leadership changed in that space, do you think?
That's almost like a wait and see. You know, I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit, and I would have to say the last 2 weeks have been so flooded with everyone talking about the benefits and pros of AI that you start to wonder what really, really is going on. And so I think a leader, a manager, is going to have to be able to identify but also act to either stay up to date with what's going on or to find people that can be part of the team to help the team grow. And they're going to have to do a lot of learning in themselves to understand what's going on and who to bring in. You know, I think the values will always stay the same.
Okay.
Definitely. They have to. Trust will be very, very important. So, and I think our trust is being tested over and over and over again through all these different adverts and all that. Like, I might read an article that says that something's happening. I don't believe it. I will go and double check to see if some other news item is going on to do that, because there is so much stuff out there now. So I think a leader's trust indicator, knowledge, has to change. That has to be very, very strong, and they now have to start asking more, is that right? Is that true? You know, that sort of thing. I find some of those values are going to be tested, but they're still going to be true. But there's so much going on out there.
It is quite chaotic, and I do understand and hear that for leaders the challenge is trying to grapple with all of that and lead people at the same time who are feeling quite vulnerable given the geopolitics at the moment, the national challenges, and trying to find a space and place about where they fit in. So what are your thoughts about leadership today? What do we need today in order to move forward for tomorrow?
I think if anything, leaders have to be more active in listening and learning. I think that's going to be crucial, because I used to talk at school about the fact that a school actually has 3 generations of people within it, and there's no difference with a business. And often I hear businessmen, leaders talking about the fact, all these young ones, they do this, they do that. But nothing has really changed in that. It's just generationally different. And so adaptation is always crucial. So the only way to adapt is to listen and learn. All right, AI is out there. So what do we need to listen to and what do we need to learn to make that part of us as a business? So as a leader, I think the leader is going to have to talk more to the younger set of people that he's employed or she's employed, because that's the only way to learn. And maybe the question is there any benefit in us taking on board this? What do you think? Rather than say, we're going to do this. So I think that narrative will probably change if you're going to grow as a leader with a business that's going to keep on being cohesive and moving forward.
So if there was someone today saying, very young and wanted to look at setting a particular progression pathway in terms of their leadership persona, and you've talked about listening and learning, what other strategies or other pointers would you have for this particular individual to grow in the leadership space?
Well, the values of leadership will always remain the same. That is crucial. So my suggestion always would be that one of the most crucial things in leadership is communication. So my suggestion would be that they learn, read, grow that way of being a person to become a leader. So I think that's the crucial bit. Values will always be important, and they are reflected always to others, and communication is crucial. And you work out the younger generation, they have, especially from my understanding is 2008, have been more computer related in their communications than face-to-face stuff, although they have their friends, etc., etc. But can they stand opposite you and conduct a conversation, a communication that gets the message across? And then if they want to be a leader, can they get it across in a way that is not offensive, is not demanding, is not considered to be aggression? So that all gets down to that body language and things of that nature. So I think it's all about that personal and body communications. That's going to be important, and I would be saying to a younger person, I think you need to learn those communication skills. That will always be important if you want to get people on side, if you want to get people to do the job that you want. And then there's the skill sets of, anything that's going on in that particular time, especially AI and VR.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell me what do you think are some of the misconceptions that are aligned with being a leader and the concept of leadership?
Oh, yeah. What are we? We're supposed to know everything, aren't we?
Well,
I think the misconception is, it's an interesting word because do we necessarily think of what a leader is? It really actually gets down to personalities and manner and things of that nature, So, And as I said to you right at the beginning, everyone is different in their leadership styles. So maybe the misconception is that everyone runs to the theory of whether you're a servant leader, for instance, oh, you're a servant leader, so you should be empathetic and all this sort of caper, So maybe the misconception is that you can actually put them in blocks. I think that's the misconception in my point of view, because everyone runs differently and the circumstances make you act differently, and the people around you make you act differently. So, I think the misconception is that everyone thinks that maybe a leader is this, that or the other.
So how do we get around that, Michael? What do you think? Well, how would we get around that misconception that we pigeonhole leaders and expectations of leaders? How do we get around that?
Well, I think it gets down to people doing a little bit more learning about leadership, maybe getting different books referencing different leaders. I think, Steve Jobs, for instance, he's an interesting fellow in his life, but he actually has a quote that I really took on, and I take it on because it actually links with how I think leaders or people grow, right? And he says, you cannot connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that somehow they're going to connect in the future, all right? Now, that's what he's said. My interpretation for me is the fact that over our time we pick up dots, their interactions, their words, their phrases, their people telling you they're going to fix their grammar and all these sorts of things. So all of these dots that you pick up, and you can never look at them going forward because you just haven't realised that all these dots are coming together. But when you look backwards, you can say, there you go. So, I might have gone off a bit of track there, but the point is that is how you grow the leaders and the people to be a leader. I don't think there's any manuals or anything that are going to be specifically helping you to get them out of those ideas of blocks. It's the constant talking, reading, learning. It's really up to you how you do that.
Yeah, that notion of self-reflection is really important.
Yeah.
In your respective roles as leaders, even, I know you say you're retired, but we know that you're very big in the tech space, still working. How do you engage in self-reflection? What does that look like, feel like and sound like for you, and how does that impact your leadership?
Yes. Well, I am a planner, and so my plan for not everything that I'm doing at the moment, but my plan actually started in 2003.
Okay.
And that was when I got a Master's in Electronic Commerce. And it was because my reflection was looking forward and not backwards. And that's why I ended up with that, because I considered that is the sort of the skill sets that I needed to start having if I wanted to grow. And as I was moving forward, I also knew that I was going to be retiring in 2021. And I set up a business in 2011 to start that consulting type work that I wanted to do. And I grew into the virtual reality stuff and all of that sort of thing.
So planning. Planning,
yes. You've got to plan, and you've got to reflect on the plan, though. It's no good having a plan if you're not going to reflect on it. And I have reflected on it. I wish I'd done a couple of things that I didn't do, but only to improve the way that I operate now. But you also have to reflect on what your skill sets are. Me, I'm a concept person. I can put concepts together, but I've got to find the people to put that into place. And in my reflections, of course, you know that I love circles. So
yes. Do you want to share that? Share that philosophy, the whole circles?
Well, the circles, that actually started when I spoke to an architect who's now deceased, but I was worrying over a building, and he said to me, Michael, it's all about the circles. You've got to do circles, and then those circles will start to play. And as you know, Nancy, I believe that the circle is a good way of identifying whether you're a global person or whether you're a community person or whether you're just isolated. But they can actually all fit in together, and they actually start to make sense if you can centralise who is the focus in that middle of the circle and then spread it out. So it can help you in many ways to develop a plan, to make sense of what you're trying to do, and to keep on looking back at the circle and saying, oh no, that doesn't exist anymore, this new circle is there. Yeah, so we're all about circles because it actually is the one way that we can make sense of how everything fits together.
Okay. Well, I'm going to give you some short, sharp questions now. See what you think. All right. Let's start with number one. What is the one non-negotiable lesson that you have learnt about leadership in any of your roles? One lesson.
One lesson, non-negotiable. I think it's self, right? Values of self. That's important. No good asking me to do something that's against the value that I have.
That's so good. Who inspires you today?
Who inspires me today? Blimey. The one person that I follow quite regularly is Aisha Khanna. She's developed many different things. She's definitely into the AI stuff now, but she's grown with that. So I follow her quite a lot because she inspires me because she actually tries to help people grow, and she creates little schools to help particular people. But she's out there with information as well.
And if there was one piece of advice you would give the younger Michael who has just stepped into that first leadership role, what would it be?
Oh, hold on tight. Yeah.
Tell me more about hold on tight.
I think if I was starting now, crikey Moses, you would have to be so open initially to take everything in that you need to start taking on board to learn. I'd be looking for some older people to talk to understand things, because one of the things that I think is lacking at the moment is prior knowledge, prior learning. Everything is so automatic and all that nowadays. There's no history of why did that happen in the first place, So, I'd be wanting to be quite reflective, I think.
Okay. And what's an important aspect of leadership that we need to know today in order to prepare for tomorrow?
Prepare for tomorrow. Can you ever plan for that? Tomorrow is so unexpected. So, I think you just have to trust yourself. You have to trust yourself that you're going to be able to manage and do things, because who would have ever thought what we're going through now was going to happen? Yes, I think you've got to trust yourself.
Michael Burgess, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Nancy. Appreciate that.